the issue of courage also comes up. Okay, we'll also be talking about empathetic and embodied listening. Okay, let's read John 11:33 to 35. When Jesus when Jesus saw her weeping, and the Jews who had come along with her also weeping, he was deeply moved in spirit and troubled. Okay, and then verse I think 35 says Jesus wept. Okay, and that's Christ for you there, a symbol of empathy, and he would listen. You know, we've been talking about vulnerability, suffering with the team, entering their experiences with genuine care, showing up not just physically but also emotionally, and that's what Christ did. It's also good that we read um, John 4:7 to 26. You'll all remember that story, the story of Christ's encounter with the Samaritan woman. We remember the story at the well. And the woman obviously was not on Christ's level, but Jesus still did what? He listened. What did Jesus do? Of course, Jesus could have dismissed her. That's what's she saying? She's not making sense. But that's not what he did. He listened. Okay, he came down to her level, and that's where he was able to win her over. Okay, so as leaders, we need to be empathetic. We should listen. We should show up physically, be present. Often we say, I'll be there with you. I'll be there with you in what? In spirit. Of course, Christ could have been there with them in spirit, right? Okay, but he was there physically and he was there emotionally. That's what we're talking about. Okay? Be present physically, show up physically, show up emotionally. We have talked earlier about reflexivity. There is one concept called reflexive journaling. So you could keep a journal. You could keep like a diary where you think through things and note them, write them down. You should be able to tell where you think you have not used your power the way you should, and you should be able to write it down and then think of ways of addressing that in the future. And that's how we get better. You do something, you're not satisfied, and you look for a way to be better. Are we together? Okay? Because we all have our weaknesses and we will fall. And that's not a problem. It's a problem if we fail to learn from those mistakes. So what we should do, we should write. Oh, I did this way. This is a better way of doing that thing. And then in the future, try to be better. Do better. Okay. So look at the story of David and Bathsheba. And we all remember Psalm 51. Psalm 51 is an example of serious, humble, sincere reflection. You look inward. What have I done? You know, David abused his power. Did he abuse his power or not? He abused his power. But he thought it through. He acknowledged his weakness. He faced it. Compare that with Saul. When Saul was confronted with his sin, how did Saul react? Justification, self-justification. And that's the difference. Are we together? That's the difference. So in leadership, and that's what we see often, even when people tell us, oh, you did this, you already have 1,000 reasons why you are right. I already have reasons. This is why I am right. And it's a major problem we have. We have justification for all those things that we do. And that's the difference between Saul and David. In the case of David, he acknowledged and he humbled himself. Okay? So that's a major lesson for us. So we've talked about this. We will repeat it. We shall see power as divine trust. Don't forget, the trust we talk about is not just that confidence in someone's ability. Rather, what do we mean by trust in this case? We're talking about something that is committed or entrusted to us to be used or cared for in the interests of another. Trust. So if you have that trust, don't forget it is divine stewardship that we're talking about. Okay, another thing we should look at is power differential in communication between leaders and followers. Communication between leaders and followers. We know that there is unequal power relations between leaders and followers. Is your power equal to the power of those you're leading? Do you have the same amount of power as the people you lead? No. So it's very likely that you have more power. You have greater influence. You can say, I am not going to promote you, because you have that power. Or you can say, yes, even after sharing, giving myself the 50%, the other 50%, you won't even get anything. You get nothing. So you're on your own. Or I can even suspend you. So the reality is that rubs off on your communication. It affects the way you communicate. They may not even be able to tell you things. They may not be able to tell you things the way they see those things, because of that inequality in power. And so every leader should be able to level out that hierarchy. For as long as there is that inequality, you can't even get sincere feedback from them. So it's the responsibility of the leader to come down to that level and even it out and make sure that there is no that you don't have that imbalance, and that's what we're talking about. Okay, so the Christ-like approach will flatten the hierarchies through vulnerability and mutual respect. We've been talking about vulnerability. That is, you will make choices that will make it possible for you to expose your own or reveal your own limitations and your weaknesses to the point that you become vulnerable, to the point that it is possible that they use those things against you, like Christ did. Are we together? If Christ had treated the disciples like servants, probably Judas would not have been able to. You understand what we're saying? But he did not treat them like that. Okay? For even the Son of Man came not to be served, but to serve others and to give his life as a ransom for many. Still talking about the issue of flattening the hierarchies. Instead of having several layers, you collapse all of that, and then we're all, in a way, in a sense, on the same level. That's how to deal with this issue. That's the Christ-like approach. John 15:15. What does it say? And I love this passage, this verse. Does that minister to us? Now I call you friends. And that's how he related with the people he led. I call you friends. And still comes back to the issue of vulnerability. Like we say here, this is what brings what? I'm looking for one popular expression in Nigerian language. See finish, that's it. You understand what we're saying? That is, he brought himself to that level. Or is that not what brings see finish? He did not present himself as their master. Rather, he was a friend. And he gave them all the information the Father gave him. What makes someone more vulnerable than that? That is the power he had. We talked about the power of information, right? As a form of power. When you give up that information, do you still have the power? No, because you have empowered those people. And that's why you see that some people hoard information. Some people hoard knowledge. Because they believe that if they give that knowledge, they lose the power they have over the people. But what did Christ do? He gave. He gave. That's what 15:15 tells us. I no longer call you slaves, because a master doesn't confide in his slaves. Now you are my friends, since I have told you everything the Father told me. So he was not hoarding the information. Rather, he released the information. He made them friends, not servants. So that's how you can deal with these unequal power relations in communication. Because ordinarily, there is a challenge there. People are not able to talk to you until you become that vulnerable, until you bring yourself. So, there is the human tendency for us to say, I don't want any insults. And we do that a lot. I don't want any insults. I can't come to their level. Before you know it now, they'll start talking to me as if we're mates. Hmm? But that's not the approach of Christ. Christ made himself a friend to them, and he empowered them. Okay, so to mitigate the differentials, look at Paul, also following Christ's example. Paul was open about his weaknesses, and that's a way to level communication dynamics. So that way you can encourage your followers to also speak freely. Are we together? So that they can overcome that superhero feeling. They're thinking that you are the superhero. Say, no, let's not talk about you. You are not you are not part of us. You are superhuman. Okay? And then also to mitigate the differentials, active dialogue. Christ himself was asking his disciples, who do people say I am? So he was interested in that feedback. What do people think? And then he asked his disciples also, okay, so what do you think? And that's what we're talking about. So also active invitation. You can ask like Christ. You can invite people to do an evaluation. You can invite people to talk about. So if you're not sure, and that dialogue is important. It's important, whatever you have done, it's important that those you lead understand why. Even though there is that tendency to say, I owe no one an explanation. We say that, right? I don't owe anybody any explanation. But the people you lead should know why you're doing what you do. If you're a leader. Okay? So you should actively invite feedback. And then your body language also. So like we've been saying, sometimes you're asking for feedback, but your body language is saying the exact opposite. They know that if they are sincere, then they're in trouble. So they will say, no, you are right, sir. Everything you've been doing, I've been telling them that since this church was founded, we've never had any. The one that was closed is Pastor, and he left in 1970. Since then, we've not had anything close to. And then they're just praise singing. That's a problem. Okay. And like we've been saying, you should reflect. You should also do a communication audit. Ask yourself, did I dominate? If you're talking, it's a major problem we have. We sometimes we think we're having meetings, but we're not having meetings. Is briefing. Yes. You have made up your mind on every issue. So you just want them to engage in an academic exercise. You are the inner caucus, you've decided. And that's a problem. Okay? So we should be open. We should be honest. We should be sincere. Listen to others. Okay. So don't. There are. Do you know there are softwares that can analyze conversations and show you what percentage you spoke of the words spoken in the meeting? Huh? So you can see you can see it if you are talking too much. You are the one doing all the talking, and they're just listening, and they are nodding. Okay, so um, then ask yourself: do you give room for feedback? Do you give room for feedback? In some organizations, when you see they have what do they call that box? Suggestion box. The only thing you will find inside is the wrapper of sweet, and because people don't believe in the system, they know that nothing will happen, even if you're right. So they won't bother. Okay, so I want to thank you all for enriching our conversation. Comments? And if there are questions, we will all answer. Yeah, are there comments? Dr. Andy, do you want to add to? It doesn't mean that you should expose yourself to risk. That's not what we're saying. The idea is that you should make sure that the people you lead don't fail to see humanity in you. That is, you are human. I don't know whether you understand what we're saying. They should still see that you are human. But if they begin to think that you are superhuman, then that becomes, of course, you should be very discreet with information about where you go and things like that. Okay? But what we're saying is that, you see, we are all on a journey. And if you are able, if, for instance, you tell the people you lead about your struggles, it's not all the time that we are certain about things. So if you ask me some questions, I'll tell you, I don't know, or I am not sure. But if I give the impression that I know everything, or I give the impression that, oh no, the journey is very easy, there are no struggles. For instance, for men, I was reading, I can't remember the name of that writer, very old pastor, preacher, who was saying that his experience is that for a man, your struggle with issues of sex is lifelong. But not everybody will tell you that. That is, you continue that battle. You have to be on your guard. One bishop was telling us that he is human, and that what he does is he was a practicing physician at that time. That to check himself, what he does is that he does not attend to a female patient alone. That there must be another person present, just to pass across that message that I am also vulnerable in this area. I have not overcome it. It's a struggle that I am living with on a daily basis. Do you understand what we're saying? So that's what we're talking about. It's not about exposing ourselves to risk. Rather, acknowledging our weaknesses rather than covering those weaknesses and pretending as though we're now superhuman. I am an angel. I am infallible. So if they mention one thing, they say, pastor, that one can never, pastor can never, that you are even using that in the same sentence with pastor. Pastor is an angel. You know that kind of idea. That's what we're talking about. Acknowledging our weaknesses and letting them know that we're in this battle, in this struggle together. So that's what we're talking about. Okay? So that way, of course, that's a way of being vulnerable. Because you are showing them that I am like you. I'm a human being like you. For me not to fall, I need to be careful, just like you need to be careful. Or someone saying, no, when that money was paid into my account, do you know, I was tempted to take half of it. But I decided not to, because I remembered that Christ would not do that. But some will give you the impression that for you to have even thought about it, then you are Judas Iscariot. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. That we have our limitations, our weaknesses. We help the people we lead by helping them understand that we are like them in that respect. So on that note, we want to bring this session to a close. Thank you all for your time. Thank you so much, sir. Thank